an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 530 through 532. The King of the Fishman Island, Neptune, the God of the Sea. The Ryugu Palace, taken by the shark that they saved. And a coward and a crybaby, the Princess in the Hard Shell Tower. In these episodes, I genuinely don't know what to think. I have a lot of questions about this whole situation with the princess and Decken. I don't get it. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode. What's up, Florian is here in the chat. Appreciate you being here, my friend. So, this is just so strange, guys. I'm going to start from the beginning rather than like kind of jumping in on the questions that I want answers to. And we'll just like get there when we get there, okay? But we start off episode 530 with this guy whose name is, I don't know if it's pronounced Gyro or Hero, because, you know, the food, which is spelled the same way, you're meant to say hero, but this is not a food. There is nothing to indicate that his name is based on a food joke, so I think it may be Gyro. They have a pirate emblem that's just a crab. It isn't a crab, Jolly Roger. I was really thinking, I kept looking at it like, where the crossbones? And not thinking that like the legs would be the crossbones, but that was not true. It was just a crab. And they are basically getting away from Fishman Island in the dead of night and fleeing for their lives, because evidently they were given an option to just like either join up with the Fishmen pirates or die. He says that, you know, they're sea monsters and they had so much at their disposal and there was no way to defend ourselves. They told us we could join the new Fishman pirates or we could die, as if they were really giving us a choice at all. Well, who wouldn't pick that over death? It's absurd. And each and every one of us is human. Why would they want us to join their ranks anyway? This is a question that, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't get the answer to by the end of this trio of episodes. And I do not have a theory on this. Like, it could be that they want humans to, like, basically for there to be a cover for something that they're doing. It could be that they want humans because there's something like nefarious going on with the way that they are utilizing humans. We see the conversation amongst the pirates, the Fishman pirates later, and they don't have respect for humans. So I'm like, it's not like they see beyond their difference in species. That's certainly not seeming to be the case. So, yeah, I genuinely can't figure it out. Like, what it is. Is it possible to be turned into a fishman? I don't think so. I feel like that would have been mentioned, right? So, I don't know. And I love the pirates are all crying because they never got to go to the mermaid cafe. And eventually, the dude in charge, who I had thought was Arlong, but then there's like this sort of jagged shape that falls in the place where his nose is that I thought was the what do you call it? Like the swordfish kind of spike nose that Arlong had. And so I had assumed this guy was Arlong, but it turns out that's like his hair, and that it's not even falling in his face. It just sort of is illustrated like that occasionally. But for the most part, that's just like a side bang. So I definitely thought that this was going to be a person that we were familiar with starting trouble again. And this is a totally different person. And his name is Hogar. Is it? Horty. You guys, I don't know if Horty is like a name in Japanese that we just decided to use the same name, or if there's a different name in the sub version to the dub version. But can I just say, this is a terrible choice because it just sounds like people are saying horny. It just sounds like horny. Horty and horny, they're too close. And you know, with the dub and the level of noise that is often taking place within a scene where people are talking, it's just so distracting how often people are like yelling, "It's Horty! Oh, he's Horty!" Like, you guys, I can't handle it. I feel like a 12-year-old, and I'm so sorry, but it is genuinely distracting to me. So I just had to say it, especially like, it turns out that these fishmen have access to this drug that's like low-key like meth. They call it a steroid, but a steroid is like a very different thing. And for me, it's hitting like they're getting methed up. And so these pills, and him sounding like his name is Horny, and he's taking pills, it's giving Viagra as as a, you know, side joke in my head every time. And I can't stop thinking about it that way. So I just really want to let you guys know how I keep having to mentally like reset myself and get back on task, because I go off on a real tangent in my own head about what is happening here. And it's not even that funny. It's just, you know, I can't help it. So Florian is in the chat saying, finally someone says it out loud. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one, because I do really feel deeply, deeply immature sometimes. And I am. And, you know, I deserve to feel that way. But then there are times like this where I'm like, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault. You put it all right there. So, and it's Horty Jones, which I don't know if this is meant to be sort of a Davy Jones, you know, his younger shitbag son or something. But what he does is he gets up and he takes this pill, and it's like there's a bowl of them just sitting there, and they are black and red, and Horty takes a handful of them. I think he takes 4. Yeah, 4. Because the one pill doubles their strength. So I'm not sure if taking 4 means that you're 4 times as strong, or if it's like exponential. And now he's like, how would that work? Like 16 times as strong? But whatever it is, he's clearly quite dangerous. And they're doing this because they feel that despite the fact that fishmen are like twice as strong as humans, they are not getting the respect and fear that they deserve from human beings. So they're going to take this pill and make themselves even stronger and just remind people who the fuck they are and not to fuck with them. So Horty winds up like going and swimming out ahead of the ship. And you guys, there is something about the fact that these guys are trying to escape, and Horty is literally so powered up that he can outdistance them and wait in front of them, that is truly scary. I mean, I would be it's one thing to be chased. It's another thing for them to be literally outpacing you while you're trying to escape. That is just embarrassing, you know? So Horty, and the scene where he like takes the drug, there's a very limited number of views of him as a whole. The camera tends to be pretty close up on his face a lot of the time, so to speak. And when he takes the drug, the camera pulls back and he's wearing this sort of like, almost like a golfer's cap. And he has long curly black hair, a sort of like jacket that's hard to see. And then he has what almost looks like a stole around his neck. The kind of stole that like a lady in the 1940s would wear where the fox head is still attached. I can't tell if it's actually like a dead animal or if it's a live animal in the way that Boa wears her snake around. I feel like it seems like it's dead and it's just an accessory. And he has also got like a shark fin sticking out of his back as well. So that is like the extent of what I can really see of his outfit. But the way that the suddenness of this drug is animated, it is actually like for a moment a little bit startling, because we come in for a real close-up on his face as he's waiting for the drugs to kick in and nothing happens at all, and then all of a sudden his eye opens and it's like accompanied by a sort of musical sting, and it's just so sudden after this long silence that even though I knew it was coming, it still made me jump a little bit. And his eyes have basically turned red in like the whites of his eyes turn red, and the irises, I guess, not the pupils, are bluish, sort of just barely visible. They kind of go into pinpricks, and you see all of the like veins and everything stand out from his body as he gets pumped up. This is sort of what it feels like for me sometimes when I take my pre-workout. It's just this like, you know, I am an unstoppable force of nature kind of feeling. And it's great. I can't lie. But it also doesn't cause the kind of damage that meth can cause. So we go back to our friends who are with Papagoo. They're outside his house, and Luffy is just blown away at how huge the whole place is. It looks like a layer cake. And the like words crimin that I have been sort of wondering what they mean, it turns out is the sub brand name, because like in the dub it's called criminal clothing. And I just think that's so funny. There's so, I don't know. I feel like that hits very true for me. I could definitely see there being a brand out there called criminal clothing. I wouldn't be surprised if it exists now and is like a One Piece sort of fandom clothing line. But yeah, so he comes in with his friends, and there are so many staff. There's like 2 butlers and like, it seems 6 or 8 mermaids. And they're all offering to get him anything he needs. He's clearly really feeling himself here. No shade, by the way. Like, if you manage to accomplish this sort of thing, be proud of yourself, you know? Like, this is the kind of fame that I can respect, where you truly came up because of your talent, and that is solely why. I'm not trying to hate on Nepo babies at all, because, you know, if I were famous and successful and had a child, I would try and give that child every advantage I could. I get it. But when you are a Nepo baby, it's not just your talent that matters. You get opportunities that other people with more talent aren't necessarily going to get. It's just a fact. And as far as I know, Papagoo has not had those sorts of advantages. He isn't a Nepo starfish. And so all of this is something that he has like really earned. And so I respect that. I am not mad at him for feeling himself. And I really, really sympathize as somebody who loves to talk and who loves like the drama of telling a well-paced story, I adore how often he gets interrupted as being like the thing now for him. I don't know if this was established earlier on with him. I don't remember enough about the interactions that we had with him a lot earlier in this series, but it happens like so many times in these episodes and the ones previous. And now I'm like just waiting for there to be a scene where he gets to actually tell a whole story. And I can't help but wonder if he's going to be like, you know, hesitating because he expects to get interrupted at any second. That would be sort of a nice moment for him of victory, of like actually getting to just share completely. But the way that this goes isn't even like, because Kami had been the one who was interrupting him all the time before, but it was Luffy here who just stops paying attention, because Luffy says, being famous must be such a pain. And Papagu says, I live for this kind of attention. Oh, I love that honesty. I love that some people, you know, some people, it's just become such a thing that wanting attention is seen as this like lowly, pathetic kind of character defect that you shouldn't even admit to. And I just, you know, cannot with that kind of attitude. We all want attention. We may want it in very different ways, but we all want it, regardless of whether we want to admit it or not. And some of us want it in a much more overt and conspicuous way than others, but it doesn't change the fact that, you know, being seen as a human being is like part of what we strive for, right? So anyway, he's in the midst of like this big speech about how, you know, when he's in the water, he's just a fashionable starfish, but out here, and he's like, you know, really gearing up to talk about himself. And Luffy just says, wait, what's that? There are tons of people. And Kami explains that the whole first floor of his place is a store, like the brand that he has made famous. So they run after her, who's, you know, she's going to give them a sort of tour and totally leave Papagu in their dust. And when they get there, it's Nami who is arguing with one of the salespeople about how all of this stuff is way overpriced and that he should give her a massive discount. I think it's like 40% she wants to pay. And this dude is just like, I absolutely cannot do that. And then Papagu comes in and says, you're welcome to as much as you can carry. And I was like, oh, bruh, that is absolutely the wrong way to phrase this. Like, of course he doesn't expect her to do what she does, but oh my God, I forgot that this guy says she wants half off, just like her wardrobe. You guys, I didn't catch that the first time. Is he slut shaming her outfit? This motherfucker. You're underwater. Of course you're in a bathing suit. How can you say half off just like our outfit when you've got these mermaids all over the place wearing like teeny tiny little seashells that barely cover their nippy nops? This, you should be used to this by now, sir. What are you even talking about? Oh, what a little bitch. Anyway, she yells at Papagu and says that this is extortion. Lower your prices or I lower you. Nami, look, he's right. There's such a thing as brand equity. Because my designs are popular there, and she says, you're not listening, and then he just says, okay, I get it. Look, we're all friends here. I guess I owe you for all the help you gave us 2 years ago. And we get the flashback to Luffy punching the celestial dragon. Whatever you want's free, take as much as you can carry. Nami says thank you, and then let's bleed them dry. Girl, I swear to God, they take everything in the store, and nobody sees a problem with this at all. They're just, you know, they have these giant packs on their backs. Nami, you greedy little Gus. Papagu, understandably, is just like, couldn't you just cut me a little slack? But Kami doesn't seem bothered at all. So anyway, this is when they get interrupted that there is like an emergency out there. This dude comes running. And when Papagu is like, what's wrong? He says, it's him. He's here. And Papagu just says, that's kind of vague. Oh my God, y'all. I LOL'd at that. It turns out, who is here but the fucking King Neptune, the sea, the god of the sea. Saying sea god kind of makes it feel open enough that there may be other gods down here, which I don't know if that's like incorrect, but saying the god of the sea feels much more like this dude is the authority figure down here. And it's so fun because he has this sort of vibe to him that's very Santa Claus-y to me. He says Jamon, Jamon, Jamon. At one point, Luffy asks him what the deal is with that, and I can't even remember what he says. But he has flowing, curly, golden beard and hair, and his nose is very, very red. I am not entirely, because like a lot of times in anime, when people's noses are red, it's meant to imply that they are drunks. And I don't feel like that's what we're doing with him. So I don't know what to make of this look, but he rides down on this whale and he doesn't even like, he's got this sort of thing next to him. It's a weird, I was trying to figure out what was going on here, but he has what looks like his crown in front of him on the whale. But then when the camera pans upward, he is wearing a crown. So I wasn't sure if that's meant to be part of like the sort of saddle that he's wearing on the whale or what. But yeah, he has a very stern, authoritative air, which makes it even funnier later when he gets back and his men just start like scolding him and he responds as if he is a disgraced 8-year-old, you know? And then all of a sudden, he says, "Oh, are these the people who do you recognize these people as the ones who saved you, Megalo?" And our friend the shark comes out with his big smile and his little t-shirt. You guys, this shark is so precious. I love him. I really do. They've just managed to animate him in such a way that he really reminds me of Pippin. That like open-mouthed, almost like blank smile that like dogs in general get when they are very, very happy with whatever is going on. Pippin gets this way when we take him to the lake or when he's been allowed to like run free at the dog park. It's just one of the top 3 expressions that a dog can wear, in my opinion. And they have just really nailed it with this shark. And I want a stuffy of him extremely badly. So yeah, the king tells them that he is inviting all of them to the palace, and Papagu and Kami both have like a huge reaction to this, whereas Luffy, as usual, is just like, oh, what, is this supposed to be a big deal? And the two of them, like, their reaction is so strong that they actually think for a moment that they can't come, that they're too lowly to possibly be allowed. And the Straw Hats like check with the king and are like, hey, they're our friends. Can they come? And he's like, sure. And later on, Kami is still sort of like, I don't know if we're really supposed to be here. And Usopp just has to remind them, like, he said right in front of you that it's fine if you come. Like, what more do you need? I'm going to only take the briefest of moments here to check in on Sanji, even though he does not deserve it. Because this dude is still out here trying to, like, the nosebleeds are threatening. And what Chopper does is he brings in the two like cross-dressing blood donors to sort of like stop Sanji's being horny. It's truly awful. I don't want to spend any more time on this at this point. I feel like that's adequate. You get the picture. And oh my God, and I've forgotten how many people also recognize Brook as Soul King. So Papa Goo's like yelling at Luffy, don't you know what this palace is? And he says, it's a holy icon for the citizens of Fishman Island. To us, it's a heavenly body where none of us are ever allowed to enter. But it's so much more than that. King Neptune, along with the 3 prince brothers and the mermaid princess, call the place there. And then Kami just says, home, the royal family lives there, so it's like a house. And they all just say, oh. And Papa Goo says, ah, Kami, that was dull. And I was like, how else were you going to say that? Because honestly, oh yeah, all the royals live in the palace. That's not exactly earth-shattering material, Papa Goo. I feel like now he's just trying to make something out of these little moments because he got deprived earlier. And this is not worthy of it. You know, it's just not interesting enough for you to draw it out like that. Oh wow, the king and his sons live in the palace. Who could have guessed? Come on. It is really cool though when you see like when he says it's like a heavenly body to us, and you see Fishman Island from the outside with that huge bubble. And then you see that like the palace is encased in a separate bubble atop the first bubble. So yeah, it's like completely divided from the rest of the Fishman territory, which is really interesting. Like having that strong a difference between the way things, because, you know, our friends, when they are in when they are on the island, when they first enter and I think they start drowning when they first come through, because going through the barrier breaks the coating on the ship, right? But they can surface eventually, and there is air within the Fishman Island bubble. But later on, when they are with the king, it seems as if there is no air in the palace bubble. And so he gives them these bits of coral that like make a bubble automatically that you can, you know, run around in. There isn't any mention of like the air eventually running out in those bubbles. And I don't know if it's supposed to be that like you can just create a new bubble anytime you want because of this sort of dispenser that you have. And so running out of air isn't a problem because you can just replace your bubble with a new one. Or if the mechanics of like running out of air are just sort of discarded when it's not particularly interesting to the writer to include it. You know what I'm saying? Just, I guess we'll see how that winds up working. And Luffy, of course, is like, so this palace of yours, have you got any good food in there? And he says, naturally, we are prepared to have a banquet in your honor. And Luffy just says, oh, well, why didn't you start with that? Yeah, let's fucking go. And everybody else, for once, is as invested in this promise of a banquet as Luffy is. So much of the time on this show, it's Luffy who wants to eat, and everybody else is like, can you please get your head out of the fucking kitchen and start focusing on what we care about? And in this case, everybody is like, there isn't actually a conflict yet. So everybody is totally willing to just like chill and have a banquet and excited about it. And it becomes a whole thing later on that they all are rather disappointed at the fact that there isn't a banquet happening clearly. And I don't know, guys, that just tickled me a little bit because you guys know, I'm a pretty food focused person. I can't help that about myself. I love it. I love food so much. And Luffy's obsession with food even tires me out. You know, like, even for myself, I'm just like, oh my God, dude, get it together. So there is something kind of gratifying about everybody equally wanting this as much. That's just a different energy than we often get on the show, because they often are just at odds with one another, you know? So, and Nami says, oh, and the royal family, I bet they have tons of treasure laying around. And I was just like, did you just announce that you plan to rob the royal family? Is that what? Did you just say that out loud? I don't get it. So anyway, Megalo is the one that's going to transport them all. And he has, I love it because they're in the air. So, you know, he has this little like inner tube bubble around his middle so that he can like swim through the air like you would water. It's just so, Megalo, you are precious. You're just a precious little angel. I forgot that Nami keeps calling the king grandpa. Why is she like this? So this is when we cut over to the pirates that tried to escape earlier, and we have this confrontation. They're trying to catch a current, so they're having to paddle, and it's just really slow, and they are not making the kind of progress they want. They're trying not to freak out, and then they see somebody ahead of them. Oh no, that's Horty Jones! And I'm not totally sure what the deal is, because Horty Jones, in this moment when they see him, the camera pans up and his wrists are shackled together. I don't understand. Like, one of them says, see his hands? And he just lifts his wrists, and everybody's like, why did he do that to himself? At first I was like, is he trying to show them that he is so confident he can win even with his hands bound together? I even thought, are the shackles part of his weird outfit? Like, has he hampered himself on purpose? So yeah, he's like lifting his hands and shows them the shackles, and then he shoots forward at this speed that is just insane. And you can see the moment, like, Gyro is just like, wait, what the fuck? And he leaves these sort of rings behind him, almost as if he's like breaking the sound barrier, you know, the speed at which he's tearing through the ship. And he goes through, I think, a total of like 3 times, once from each side, and then he comes up from underneath the ship like fucking Jaws and crashes through it and lands on the deck. And he's still, by the way, got these shackles on, right? And Gyro says there's only one of him, take him out, and everybody shoots at him. This dude just literally stands there, doesn't move, doesn't try to protect himself, nothing. The bullets do absolutely zilch. And one of the pirates, oh no. He just says, oh no. Oh my God, there's something about that that's just so, it's so precious, it's so understated, you know? And this is when Gyro says, you're only a fish, so let me teach you a lesson. Don't mess with humans. And I was just like, look, Gyro, I understand the urge to try and make a point in a moment like this. But that man just withstood 6, 8 shotguns. They all fired at the same time. And he didn't even block them, and he's fine. Show me any human that can do that and have no, like, why, he's just really burying his head in the sand in regard to what this guy can handle. So he comes at him and says, I'm not done yet. And as he's coming at him, and I found this sort of confusing, he's running, he swings a sword. The sword appears to break in half, and as it breaks, he yells, I'm not done yet. Then we see Horty's mouth open, and it cuts from his mouth opening to like these pieces of something like breaking and falling to the ground, which I think maybe is his club or something. I'm not sure what it is that we see falling to the ground. I think it must be that's his crab claw hand, huh? That's what that is. That crab claw hand is really, really weird. I don't like it. Like, you guys know that I have long been sort of distracted by the nature of some of the human beings in this show who are clearly part mouse or part goat or sheep or whatever. And it's just never addressed that they clearly are partially an animal. And I know that we have gotten some word on how fishmen can mate with humans and have kids that are part fishes. So I'm assuming this is something like that. But he looks so completely human except for this one hand being a claw, a crab claw. And then, you know, the people who are sheep-like the one who gave them the Mary, is he the child of a sentient sheep being? Fishman, because they're part fish and part man, so is it sheep man who mated with a human woman or vice versa? I just really, there are some things that I both want to know the answer to and I also don't. I can't decide. But yeah, Horty says, we were tough before this, but with this, we are unbeatable. Fishmen are naturally 10 times stronger than humans, but that hasn't made a strong enough impression. I didn't remember it was 10 times as strong. That's quite excessive. With just one pill, we can double our strength and finally strike some terror in their cowardly little hearts. And I don't know, he's like, you know, even if it does shorten our lifespan, we aren't afraid of dying if we can realize our dreams, right? And I couldn't help but think, like, this feels like Moria to me. This feels like somebody who is sacrificing for a short-term gain and probably going to, like, gutter out in the middle of a fight because they just overdid it. And, you know, we'll just have to see how that goes. And then after he takes this dude down, he bites the mast of the ship. And honestly, for me, this felt like unnecessary because he already has blown through the ship from 3 different angles. Your ship is sinking. Like, the ship should be sinking already. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It just should be game over. But this is when one of the guys says, oh, I think he just wore those to prove that he doesn't need his hands free in order to sink us. So, yeah. But, yeah, this moment of, like, yeah, I took down the mast and now you guys are screwed. I was like, they were screwed already. You didn't need to do this. You just decided that you wanted to bite the mast because probably this drug makes you grind your teeth and he's just doing it like you know, people at a rave with their little pacifiers. And he, like, uses the mast to, like, as a weapon, like, chucks it at them on the ship. So disrespectful. And then yanks his hands apart and just snaps that set of chains. And the ship is still, like, it's together enough that there are a couple guys on there that are still alive. And he says, yeah, I want you guys to send this on to the new world with some of these dudes alive so that they can bring a message to everybody about what the fuck we're capable of. Once we've liberated Fishman Island from the gutless god of the sea, Neptune, we'll be coming to drag you humans to the bottom of these depths. I promise you that. And the fishmen will stand on top of the world as the supreme species. And I've just got to say, up close, this dude really does resemble like a later Michael Jackson. He definitely has the like sort of oddly flattened nose that Michael Jackson had once he got his surgery after that accident with that Pepsi commercial. So anyway, going into the next episode, and I feel like I've talked about a lot of this stuff like out of order, so I'm not that worried about like missing anything here, but I'm only going to briefly talk about a couple things. First, we have the escape of a wet-haired caribou, who, it's such a bizarre scene. These mermaids are opening the what do you call it? Barrel that he's in. And it's funny because like last episode, we saw a bunch of mermaids that were near the barrel, and they just kind of are like, oh, where's Jane? Where's Jane? You know, that kind of thing. And then they look over and the barrel's there and they're like, huh, Jane was right there. What happened to them? But then you see this scene and the level of like shouting and drama of it all. I'm like, how is this supposed to have taken place like 10 feet away from those other mermaids and they didn't notice any of it? That doesn't make any sense. You know, like it doesn't really work, but it's fine. And he's capturing these girls. And at first I thought it was going to be like, oh, he's just a pervo who wants to have like imprisoned mermaids for his own creepy enjoyment. But he reminds us that they are worth a lot of money, which I keep forgetting. I just genuinely like, that was a whole thing with Kame, you know, like, but yeah, straight up keep forgetting. Because it just seems like such a weird thing. And frankly, it is a weird thing. Like anything being worth extreme amounts of money, when you step back and look at the thing, oftentimes when you get right down to it, your reaction is just sort of, but why? And so, you know, I guess this makes sense. But yeah, he manages to capture them in mud before they can get back to the water and plans on selling them. And I can't wait for our friends to catch up with them because I think that this guy is so pitiful and he needs to get fucking put in his place and killed. Just take him out, guys. Y'all should have killed him on the ship to begin with. You shouldn't even have put him in that barrel. I'm not really certain what that would look like. I feel like maybe if they had just shoved the barrel out of the overall what do you call it, coating on the ship, that the water pressure would have crushed the barrel and killed him. And that is what they should have done. Basically the equivalent on like a spaceship of just putting him out of the airlock. But yeah, he is just really like so proud of himself for this whole thing and is like, oh, mermaids, they sell for 70 million and I've caught 3 of them. That is quite the catch. Those stupid straw hats helped me out after all. If it gets me a free pass through immigration, you can lock me in a barrel anytime. I don't know why, but his mention of immigration was just so weirdly specific. It felt very strange to me. So the last thing we see is him just like, you know, walking away down the street and with his bizarre gait and his long sleeves. He is such a weird character. So we go back to this area where the guards have come and are talking to a bunch of the mermaids at the cafe. And these guards are part of the crew that is trying to track the Straw Hats down based on this prediction that the seer made, that Luffy was going to destroy the country. She calls it the country, and I guess it is a country. It's just a weird, you know, way of saying it instead of island. So these dudes, like, when they're talking about the fact that these pirates have these high bounties, like, the guards are trying to paint the Straw Hats as being no good pirates, and that they probably only saved Kami and developed a relationship with her so that they could then capture her themselves. And it's just so funny because, like, if that were the case, they could have done that way before now. Like, if that was their plan, they're taking their sweet time about it. And everybody around them is just like, this doesn't make any sense. But the guards are convincing enough that they start to doubt themselves. And evidently, this lady who has this vision has had other extremely correct prophecies in the past. And that is something it's really hard for me to argue with. That's the thing. Florian is talking about the mermaids being close to the drama of Wet Hair Caribou, and says maybe they were underwater and did not hear. I accept that as an answer. Okay, that works. But the whole, like, setup here with the fact that all of her prophecies have come true before, this is the sort of thing that, were I reading a story where I got to see that her prophecies had always been true, and then these people show up, she says, oh, they're going to burn down our whole country. And if people don't take it seriously, as somebody, watching this unfold, I'd be very irritated. And I'd be like, she's always right. Why aren't you listening to her? And so, as much as it galls me that there's nothing really specifically about that vision that indicates that Luffy is the reason the country burned, he is in amongst the flames, but the fact that she is just jumping to the conclusion he's the reason for it, that does bother me. But I keep just reminding myself, yeah, but she's been right every time from what they're saying. So what do you do with that, And the prince, who is, Mr. Super Serious, especially in comparison to his father, it seems like, decides that this is a threat that we have to really get on top of, because who knows when it'll be too late. So let's see. Oh yeah. Neptune is talking about how his daughter was really upset about Megalo going away, and that she had tears welling up in her eyes. And we find out later that she just cries about fucking everything. It's so, what a weird thing they're doing with this character. I love Papagu saying the princess has a shark for a pet, and Brooke just says, oh, what's that, Papagu? Is it possible that you're not as intimate with the princess as you claimed? And he starts sweating and then turns to Brooke and says, shh, to which Brooke says, it did sound fishy. Oh my God, this dude. I love you, Brooke. I really do. So they get there. Everybody is hugely impressed with this incredible palace. I think it's Luffy that says something about how, like, it's way better than Papagu's place. And we get an explanation about the light coming down here. Nami calls him Grandpa. If we're 10,000 meters below sea level, why is it so bright and sunny everywhere we go? And he says, that's likely what our ancestors thought when they first arrived here. That this is the only place in the deep sea that light reaches. It's a glorious, glowing beacon for all of fish mankind, and has been for as long as anyone can remember. We owe it all to the giant sun tree, Eve, whose mighty roots reach into the depths, carrying shimmering sunlight along with them. And Nami says, wait, are the roots bioluminescent, or does it just transfer sunlight from the surface? And he says, the latter, though scientists have puzzled over the specifics for ages. The respiration of its roots also supplies oxygen from the surface to our island. We owe our entire civilization to this single mystic tree. So it's like the big brother or big sister of the mangroves in Sabaody. This is a really interesting idea. It also is very much giving like the tree in Avatar, the movie, where, everybody's life is tied in with it, and then some fucking colonizers come in and cut it down. I have some big concerns about the future of this tree now that we know pretty much everything hinges on its well-being. I can't help but feel as if I smell danger. That's all I'm saying. It just feels like that can't be good, So anyway, I'm going to jump through things a little bit here because I already talked about him getting scolded when he gets back about leaving on his own and not telling people where he's going and everything. He keeps insisting that there's going to be a banquet, but there's, no food in sight and nobody really knows what to do. Luffy, meanwhile, has just left the group looking for food on his own. And I think the dude is just rolling in this the bubble. Honestly, this is probably what I would also do. It just looks very fun. And he follows the scent of food and winds up going through this doorway into this tower. And he's in this very dark area. It's odd because the hallways going there are all very bright, tons of fish swimming around and coral and everything. It's really, really pretty. And then he goes through another one of those barriers and there's no water beyond it. And he can smell food and see somebody going by with one of those trolleys, like a room service sort of trolley. But he can't smell anything. And he's like, okay, so the food must be through those doors. So the person walking by him with these trolleys is 3 times his size. They're humongous. And Luffy sees him and is just kind of like, oh, that's weird. But doesn't comment on that. I really want more information on why some people are so big. I just, this princess looks like she's 5 times the size of her father. Why is that? I don't know. So Luffy sees all of these barriers on the door and thinks that it must be to keep the food secure and that the food must be really good if there's nobody in here or if they're not allowing anybody in here. So he comes through the doors into the dark and there is this look for me that very much was giving boobs. It's a shadowy figure, but I'm just like, that's boobs though. He immediately jumps forward towards the food that he can see and lands on this surface that is bouncy and jiggly. And he's enjoying himself and starts jumping up and down until finally the princess, who it turns out he's jumping up and down on top of, wakes up. And it turns out that he was bouncing around on her boobs, which if this were Sanji, he would be dead. That'd be it. Sanji, gone. I just, there's no coming back from this if he were the one here. Forget it. It's not even I was going to say, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a fetish for really large women or the what do you call it? I'm trying to remember, but I don't even think that's a thing for Sanji. I just think there's no way that you are around titties that size with the kind of personality that he has and you don't absolutely completely lose your mind when you see this. So the princess yells at him about how shitty this was for him to jump up and down on her like that. And is he here to hurt her? Please don't. But then she says, I'm not afraid of you. But then she starts weeping openly. And eventually what we find out is that Vanderdecken is obsessed with her. And he has eaten the mark fruit. And by marking her, any weapon he throws will find her. And so he wants to marry her, and he seems to be under the impression that she also wants to marry him, but that she's being kept from doing so by her, like, evil father, when in fact she doesn't want anything to do with him. And so Vanderdecken chucks this, like, axe at her that has a huge rose painted on the side. And as Luffy points out a little bit later, he wants to marry you, but he also just tried to kill you. That doesn't really make any sense. The way that Vanderdecken phrased it was something like, if you don't marry me, then you don't get to be alive. Something like that. So, like, we know that he has sort of reached a point where if I can't have you, nobody can. But from Luffy's perspective, yeah, it doesn't really make any sense. You know, it's just sort of like, wait, but hold on. And Vanderdecken also, unless I am, you know, failing to see this because there hasn't been anybody next to him in comparison, but isn't Vanderdecken, like, about Luffy's same size, maybe a bit bigger? How is he gonna marry this giant fucking lady? She's huge. She's like her tail alone looks like it's 40 feet long. Like, Luffy standing and talking to her, her head alone is about his height. So Vanderdecken, maybe it is a fetish thing for him. I don't even know. But yeah, Vanderdecken, when he is being pulled along by, what's his name? Watsumi? Something like that. He yells down, is there anything you want to tell me? And I couldn't tell because this little sea guy, have you received a reply? He says, no, sorry, Vanderdecken, there is still no word. And he says, how long has she kept me waiting? And Watatsumi, that's his name, she's really taking her time. I don't blame her. This is the doing of that despicable Neptune. He intends to force the princess into a political marriage, or so I suspect. And it turns out this is kind of his catchphrase. He says, or so I suspect, a bunch of times. This man, we finally get a good look at him. And I don't know what the fuck. Like, first of all, he's got 4 legs. And when I say legs, I'm not saying like he's on all 4s. I'm saying he has a human body upright, but instead of 2 legs, he has 4. His hair sticks straight out sideways in these zigzags, and he also has a pencil mustache and a hat that is like sort of giving Humphrey Bogart a little bit. The hair, it kind of reminds me of Jim Carrey's character in the Sonic movies. Name I can't remember. And his hands are webbed. So he's got some fishman in him. He also has these like shoulders that look like they're very hunched, but there's a cape over them. So I am suspecting that maybe he has like fins under there. And so it just looks like his shoulders are hunched, but there's something else going on. But yeah, he begins to scream about how, like, he loves her so much, and I'll never find another as big and beautiful as you, my dear. We are meant to be together, and so I'll twist the head off fate itself to prevent you from being with anyone else. I don't know why, but I really love the phrasing of I'll twist the head off fate itself. That's metal as hell. I love this so much. So anyway, sorry. The princess later on, Luffy saves her by catching this axe that is headed straight for her. And then all of these dudes pile in because they have already dealt with the straw hats that are down in the main room, saying like, there's this prophecy and we've got to take them into custody. And they come to her room looking for Luffy. And she insists that he isn't here. And hides him in the palm of her hand. That's how small he is in comparison to her. And one of the captains, when her shark pet arrives, says, "Oh, that reminds me, I have some dire and vexing information I must relay to you immediately. In regard to the pirate who saved Megalo, the one known as Straw Hat Luffy." And he says some mermaid girls were kidnapped and he's our prime suspect. It never occurred to me that Luffy would start to be suspected of this crime, but that does make a lot of sense. And so, yeah, we've locked them all in the prison just to be safe. And we have the swordsman in custody. Upon arrival, he drank himself into a state of compliance. I love that phrasing. Into a state of compliance. So she, like, at this point is covering for Luffy because he just saved her. But she's just really not sure, what to do here. And she asks him, "You saved Megalo, but they're saying you're a bad person. Are you?" And Luffy says, "Well, you have to figure that out for yourself." And later on, she gives him all of the food that has been brought to her. And he's eating, and she sort of like pokes at him as he's eating and causes him to, I won't say like throw up. It's more like she knocks the food out of his mouth. And because I'm trying to see exactly how she does this. I can't remember if she says it's so cute how full your cheeks are. And she pokes his cheek. And so he spits everything out. And he turns and says, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And it turns out she has never been yelled at ever. And so just him saying this is enough to break her into tears again. And she calls him a brute and tells him to get out. I love her shark being like really anxious about her state of mind. How are you not used to this by now? But yeah. Anyway, eventually she says there's lots of places I'd love to see because she's being kept in here 10 years straight. She's bored as hell. There's a rule people can't stay for more than like 5 minutes. And he has finished all her food and he's like, "All right, well, let's get out of here and go take a stroll." And she says, "I can't." And Luffy is just like, "Why not? I don't get it. You'll be okay if that guy throws something at you. Fine. I'll take it down just like last time." And both her and her shark are just like, "Wait, what?" And I was kind of thinking, he feels like he's proved himself here. I think you've got somebody pretty solid. Using hockey, he seems to be pretty much on top of if there is a weapon coming at you. Meanwhile, our friends who they are trying to corner in the hall, they're about to be got when Zoro comes out of nowhere and has evidently slept off his hangover and is ready to fight again. So the episode ends with Decken showing up and he meets with the new Fishman pirates and makes a deal with them. He's over here shaking the hand of what's his face. He has to put like a glove on in order to do it. But they're joining forces here. What a weird alliance. Like, it makes sense. It actually kind of does. But yeah, he's agreeing to help them conquer them and then kill Neptune, god of the sea. And Horty says, "And lastly, we will destroy the entire Ryugu kingdom." And that's the end of the episode. So, all right. I have a lot of questions. I got a lot of questions. I'm looking forward to more of this, though. I'm enjoying this arc so far. All right, everybody. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you again so much for listening. Thank you, Florian, for commissioning this one. I hope y'all are enjoying it. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.